My life took a turn I never saw coming. A betrayal so deep it still leaves a bitter taste. What if I told you that a single conversation, a casual mention of my brother's wedding, could unravel a lifetime of lies and expose a family secret darker than anything I could have imagined? This isn't just about a wedding, it's about the shattering of an illusion, the brutal awakening to a truth that had been buried for decades. I was Susan, a woman who thought she knew her family, who believed in the bonds of blood, until one afternoon, everything I held dear was ripped apart. It all started innocently enough. A typical Sunday dinner at my Aunt Carol's house in upstate New York. The aroma of her famous pot roast filled the air, a scent that usually brought comfort. But that day, it became intertwined with the stench of deceit. We were chatting about my younger brother Mark and his upcoming nuptials. He was marrying Sarah, a wonderful woman he'd met at Syracuse University, and the excitement in our family was palpable. "Can you believe Mark's getting married?" I said, stirring my iced tea. "It feels like just yesterday he was a little kid, always getting into trouble." Aunt Carol, usually so lively, suddenly froze. Her fork, laden with mashed potatoes, clattered against her plate. A hush fell over the dining room, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the refrigerator. Her eyes, usually sparkling with warmth, darted around the room, wide with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps, or a deep, unsettling regret. "Carol, are you all right?" my mother asked, her voice laced with concern. Aunt Carol swallowed hard, her gaze finally settling on me, but it seemed to pierce right through me, as if she were looking at a ghost. A shiver ran down my spine. The air grew colder despite the warmth of the summer afternoon. "Mark, getting married," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper, as if testing the words on her tongue. Then, she pushed her plate away, the scraping sound echoing in the sudden silence. "There's something you need to know, Susan. Something about Mark. Something your parents have kept hidden for too long." My heart hammered against my ribs. What could possibly be so monumental, so secretive, that it would make Aunt Carol, the rock of our family, crumble like this? My parents exchanged a frantic glance, a silent communication passing between them that screamed alarm. My father cleared his throat, a nervous habit he had when he was uncomfortable. My mother gripped her napkin so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Carol, now isn't the time," my father interjected, his voice stern, an edge I rarely heard. But Aunt Carol shook her head, her resolve hardening. The fear in her eyes was replaced by a steely determination, a sense of duty that transcended any family loyalty she might have once felt. "No, Richard," she countered, her voice gaining strength. "It's long past time. Susan deserves to know the truth. They both do." She looked at me again, her gaze unwavering. "Mark isn't who you think he is, Susan. He's not your brother." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Not my brother? What did she mean? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the nonsensical. We shared parents, a childhood, countless memories. This couldn't be true. This had to be some cruel joke. But the gravity in Aunt Carol's eyes, the palpable tension radiating from my parents, told me this was no joke. This was the raw, unvarnished truth, about to be unleashed. "What are you talking about, Aunt Carol?" I finally managed, my voice hoarse. My parents were on the verge of protest, their faces pale with dread, but Aunt Carol held up a hand, silencing them. "Your parents, Susan," she began, her voice low and steady, "they adopted Mark. And the circumstances surrounding that adoption. They were not what you were told. There was another family, a terrible secret, and a price that was paid, a price that has haunted me for years." The room spun. Adopted? My brother, my little brother. Adopted? And a secret? A terrible price? Every memory, every shared laugh, every childhood fight, suddenly felt tainted, filtered through a lens of deception. Who was Mark, really? And what had my parents done? My world, once so stable, began to crack, revealing a chasm of questions that demanded answers. Aunt Carol took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. And that's not even the worst of it, Susan. The real story, it involves someone you know, someone you trust, someone who helped orchestrate this entire charade. And what she did. To hide it all. It will make your blood run cold. I sat there, stunned, my mind reeling, utterly incapable of processing the bombshell that had just been dropped. This was just the beginning. The truth, when it finally emerged, would redefine everything I thought I knew about my family, about love, and about betrayal. You think you know your family. You think you know the secrets they keep? What I'm about to tell you will make you question everything. And believe me, you won't want to miss a single shocking detail. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to my clothes, a constant reminder of where I'd spent the last agonizing hours. My brother, Michael, lay in a hospital bed, his face pale and bruised, a stark contrast to the vibrant, boisterous man I knew. He was supposed to be celebrating his engagement, not fighting for his life. The doctor's words echoed in my head, a cruel, relentless loop, hit and run. Critical condition. We're doing everything we can. My name is Cassandra, and in that moment, watching Michael struggle for every breath, a cold, unwavering resolve settled deep within me. It wasn't just grief I felt. It was a burning resentment, a furious anger that clawed at my insides. Michael was my anchor, my confidant, the person who always knew how to make me laugh even when the world felt like it was crumbling. We had plans, big plans, for his wedding, for our future. Now all of that hung by a thread, shattered by a reckless act. The police had no leads, no witnesses, just a mangled car and a broken family. They called it an accident, but I knew, deep in my gut, that it was something more. The way Michael's fiancée, Sarah, had been acting in the days leading up to the incident, the hushed phone calls, the sudden mood swings. It all felt wrong. She'd been distant, almost secretive, a stark departure from her usual open, loving self. I remembered the last time I saw Michael before the accident, just hours before. He'd been beaming, talking excitedly about wedding venues and honeymoon destinations. Sarah had been there too, but her smile hadn't quite reached her eyes. She'd kept glancing at her phone, her fingers twitching, a nervous energy radiating from her. I'd brushed it off then, attributing it to pre-wedding jitters. But now, every memory felt tainted, every interaction replayed with a sinister undertone. Cassandra, I told myself, you need to pay attention. The police investigation was moving at a snail's pace, their reassurances doing little to soothe my frayed nerves. They kept repeating protocols, procedures, and the frustrating reality of limited resources. It felt like they were just going through the motions, while Michael lay there, his life hanging in the balance. I couldn't stand idly by, watching my brother fade away while the person responsible walked free. This wasn't just about justice. It was about protecting what little family I had left. My parents were gone, taken too soon, and Michael was all I had. The thought of losing him too, especially like this, was unbearable. A knot tightened in my stomach. As I recalled a conversation I'd overheard between Sarah and her best friend Emily a few weeks prior. They thought I was out of earshot, but the hushed intensity of their voices had piqued my curiosity. Sarah had been talking about a problem, something that could ruin everything. Emily had urged her to handle it quickly before Michael found out. At the time, I'd dismissed it as typical pre-wedding drama, but now, a chilling possibility began to form in my mind. Could Sarah be involved? The idea was monstrous, unthinkable, yet it gnawed at me. The hospital waiting room became my temporary home. Every flicker of the fluorescent lights, every hushed conversation, every distant siren, fueled my anxiety and my growing suspicion. I spent hours poring over Michael's phone, searching for clues, anything that could shed light on what truly happened. His call logs were mundane, his messages innocent, but a gut feeling, an instinct I couldn't ignore, told me there was more to uncover. Cassandra, you have to find out the truth. no matter how ugly it is. The next day, as I sat by Michael's bedside, a nurse mentioned that Sarah had been acting strangely, asking unusual questions about Michael's prognosis, almost as if she were calculating something. It was a fleeting comment, but it struck a chord. My resentment towards the unknown assailant now began to morph, twisting into a dark suspicion directed squarely at Sarah. The woman Michael was supposed to marry, the woman he loved, could she be capable of such deceit? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I couldn't dismiss it. Later that evening, while Sarah was out getting coffee, I found myself drawn to her purse, left carelessly on a chair. My conscience screamed at me, but my need for answers was stronger. I rummaged through it, my heart pounding, a mixture of guilt and desperation coursing through me. Tucked away in a small zippered compartment, I found it, a burner phone. It was an old model, the kind people used when they didn't want to be traced. My fingers trembled as I switched it on, the screen illuminating a single unsent text message. "It's done. He won't be a problem anymore." My breath caught in my throat. The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold, hard truth crashing down on me. My world tilted on its axis. The resentment I felt earlier was nothing compared to the searing pain of betrayal that now consumed me. "Cassandra, you were right." This was no accident. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the cold hospital floor. A nurse, passing by, paused, offering a sympathetic glance, but her words of comfort were a distant echo. My world had narrowed to the horrifying glow of that screen, the stark white text burning itself into my retina. "It's done. He won't be a problem anymore." Michael, my brother Michael. The man who lay broken and barely breathing in that sterile room. This wasn't just an accident. This was deliberate. This was murder, or at least an attempt at it. A raw, guttural cry tore from my throat, a sound I barely recognized as my own. It wasn't grief anymore. It was a volcanic eruption of rage, a searing inferno that consumed every rational thought. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the sheer force of the fury coursing through my veins. Sarah. The name tasted like ash on my tongue. Sarah, Michael's fiancée, the woman he adored, the woman I had welcomed into our family with open arms. She was the one who sent that message. There could be no other explanation. The hushed phone calls, the distant glances, the nervous energy I'd dismissed as pre-wedding jitters, it all coalesced into a monstrous, undeniable truth. She had orchestrated this. She had tried to kill Michael. My mind raced, frantically piecing together every interaction, every suspicious detail. I remembered her sudden insistence on Michael taking that specific route home, the one notorious for its blind turns and lack of streetlights. I recalled her subtle attempts to isolate him from his friends in the weeks leading up to the wedding, always finding an excuse for them to cancel plans. At the time, I'd thought it was just her wanting to spend more time with him, a sign of her deep affection. Now it was a chilling pattern, a carefully constructed web of deceit designed to ensnare him. The casual comments about Michael's life insurance policy, made with a laugh and a dismissive wave of the hand, suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. I had brushed them off as morbid humor, a gallows joke about their future together. Now they were a chilling confession. I snatched up the phone, my fingers fumbling as I scrolled through her recent messages. Nothing. She was too smart for that. But the unsent text, still lingering in her drafts, was a digital smoking gun. Who was he? Who was she communicating with? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. She hadn't acted alone. This was a conspiracy, a cold-blooded plot to eliminate my brother. A cold certainty settled over me, replacing the initial shock. The police, with their endless paperwork and slow-moving investigations, would never uncover this. They would call it a tragic accident, a hit and run without a trace. But I knew the truth, and I would make sure the truth came out. Not just for Michael, but for every unsuspecting soul who might fall victim to someone as calculating and cruel as Sarah. My eyes fixated on Michael's pale, still formed through the glass of his hospital room. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, not of sorrow, but of an iron-willed determination. I would become the person Michael needed me to be. I would be his protector, his avenger. The world had just underestimated Cassandra. They thought I was just the quiet younger sister, easily dismissed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The resentment I felt earlier, the bitter anger at the injustice of it all, transformed into something far more potent, far more dangerous. It was an obsession, an unyielding, all-consuming need for justice. For Michael. I would unravel every lie, expose every conspirator, and make sure Sarah paid for what she had done. Every fiber of my being screamed for retribution. The gentle sister was gone, replaced by a relentless hunter. My brother, Michael, deserved nothing less. My first step was to secure the evidence. I carefully took a photo of the unsent text message with my own phone, the digital timestamp a silent witness. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, I deleted the incriminating draft from Sarah's phone, placing it back exactly where I found it. No trace, no immediate suspicion. I had to play this smart. I couldn't afford to tip her off, not yet. She was a viper, and I needed to approach her with the same cunning. The immediate priority was Michael's recovery, but my focus had shifted. While the doctors worked to mend his broken body, I would begin to dismantle the carefully constructed facade of his fiancée. I needed information, names, connections. My mind, usually prone to overthinking, became razor-sharp, focused with a singular, terrifying clarity. I would start with her phone records, her social media, anything that could give me a glimpse into her secret life. I would talk to her friends, her family, anyone who might unwittingly reveal a piece of the puzzle. Every casual conversation, every seemingly insignificant detail would be scrutinized. I would become a shadow, watching, listening, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about ensuring that no one else would suffer the way Michael had. It was about exposing the monster hiding in plain sight. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to my clothes, a constant reminder of where I'd spent the last agonizing hours. My brother, Michael, lay in a hospital bed, his face pale and bruised, a stark contrast to the vibrant, boisterous man I knew. He was supposed to be celebrating his engagement, not fighting for his life. The doctor's words echoed in my head, a cruel, relentless loop, hit and run. Critical condition. We're doing everything we can. My name is Cassandra, and in that moment, watching Michael struggle for every breath, a cold, unwavering resolve settled deep within me. It wasn't just grief I felt. It was a burning resentment, a furious anger that clawed at my insides. Michael was my anchor, my confidant, the person who always knew how to make me laugh even when the world felt like it was crumbling. We had plans, big plans, for his wedding, for our future. Now, all of that hung by a thread, shattered by a reckless act. The police had no leads, no witnesses, just a mangled car and a broken family. They called it an accident, but I knew, deep in my gut, that it was something more. The way Michael's fiancée, Sarah, had been acting in the days leading up to the incident, the hushed phone calls, the sudden mood swings, it all felt wrong. She'd been distant, almost secretive, a stark departure from her usual open, loving self. I remembered the last time I saw Michael before the accident, just hours before. He'd been beaming, talking excitedly about wedding venues and honeymoon destinations. Sarah had been there too, but her smile hadn't quite reached her eyes. She'd kept glancing at her phone, her fingers twitching, a nervous energy radiating from her. I'd brushed it off then, attributing it to pre-wedding jitters. But now, every memory felt tainted, every interaction replayed with a sinister undertone. Cassandra, I told myself, you need to pay attention. The police investigation was moving at a snail's pace, their reassurances doing little to soothe my frayed nerves. I couldn't wait for them to catch up. My own investigation had to begin. It wasn't just about finding the driver. It was about uncovering the truth behind Sarah's strange behavior, the truth that felt inextricably linked to Michael's fate. I started with her inner circle, the people she spent the most time with, the ones who might unwittingly reveal a piece of the puzzle. Every casual conversation, every seemingly insignificant detail, would be scrutinized. I would become a shadow, watching, listening, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring that no one else would suffer the way Michael had. It was about exposing the monster hiding in plain sight. My first target was Sarah's cousin Jessica. They were inseparable, or so I thought. Jessica worked at the same real estate firm as Sarah, and I figured she'd be privy to a lot of Sarah's secrets. I arranged a casual lunch, pretending I just wanted to catch up, to talk about Michael and his slow recovery. The restaurant buzzed with midday chatter, a stark contrast to the quiet storm brewing inside me. I ordered a salad, barely touching it, my gaze fixed on Jessica's face, searching for any flicker of discomfort, any telltale sign. "It's just so awful about Michael," Jessica began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "I still can't believe it. He's such a good guy." I nodded, feigning agreement. "He really is. It's just, Sarah seems to be taking it so hard." I barely see her anymore. This was a calculated lie. Sarah had been at the hospital every day, a picture of devotion, but I needed to plant a seed of doubt to gauge Jessica's reaction. Jessica's eyes darted away for a moment, a subtle shift that I didn't miss. "Yeah, well, it's a lot to deal with. She's been under a lot of stress lately, even before the accident," I pressed, my voice carefully neutral. "What kind of stress?" She hesitated, picking at a loose thread on her napkin. "Just wedding planning, I guess. And work. She's been really busy with a big new client." That was interesting. Sarah had mentioned a new client before, but always vaguely. "Oh, anyone I know?" Jessica shook her head. "No, I don't think so. A really high-profile guy, apparently. Very demanding." "He's been keeping her on her toes." The way she said high-profile and demanding struck me as odd, almost offensive. It felt like she was trying to deflect, to steer the conversation away from something specific. Demanding how? I pushed, my heart beginning to pound a little faster. Like late-night calls? Weekend meetings? A flicker of annoyance crossed Jessica's face, quickly masked. "Cassandra, what are you getting at? Sarah is devastated about Michael." "She loves him." "I know she does," I said, forcing a smile. "But I'm worried about her. She's been acting so strange. And Michael deserves to know if there's anything going on that could have put him in danger." The word danger hung in the air, a deliberate provocation. Jessica's composure finally cracked. Her eyes widened, a flash of fear in their depths. "Danger? What are you talking about?" "Just a feeling," I replied, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "A gut feeling that this wasn't just an accident. And I think Sarah knows something." I watched her closely, every muscle in my body tensed. She took a shaky breath, her gaze fixed on something over my shoulder. "You're imagining things, Cassandra." Sarah would never hurt Michael. She wouldn't. Her denial was too vehement, too immediate. It sounded less like reassurance and more like a desperate attempt to convince herself. "Maybe not directly," I conceded. "But what if she was involved with someone who would? Someone who felt threatened by Michael? Or by the wedding?" Jessica pushed her plate away, her appetite clearly gone. I can't talk about this, Cassandra. It's not my place." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I have to go." "I have another appointment." She practically fled the restaurant, leaving me sitting there amidst the lingering scent of her perfume and the unanswered questions swirling in my mind. Her reaction was everything I needed. Jessica knew something she was terrified to reveal. The high-profile, demanding client was clearly more than just a client. This was no longer just about a hit and run. It was about betrayal, about a secret life Sarah had been leading, A life that had somehow intersected with Michael's in the most catastrophic way imaginable. My resolve hardened further. I would find out who this client was, and I would expose every last one of Sarah's secrets, no matter how painful the truth might be. Michael deserved justice, and I was going to deliver it. My aunt, bless her heart, had always been a fount of unintentional wisdom. Her words, often delivered with a dramatic sigh and a knowing look, usually contained some kernel of truth. This time, however, her casual mention of Michael's wedding had frozen her in place, her eyes wide with a sudden dawning horror. The air in the cozy living room, usually filled with the comforting scent of her lavender potpourri, grew thick with unspoken dread. She fumbled with her teacup, the delicate porcelain rattling against the saucer, a sound that amplified the tension building between us. "Michael's wedding?" she finally whispered, her voice barely audible, her gaze darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. "Oh, Cassandra, honey, there's something you don't know." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the fear I saw in her eyes. This was it. This was the missing piece, the truth I had been relentlessly chasing. I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the earthquake rumbling inside me. "Aunt Carol, what is it? What about Michael's wedding?" She wrung her hands, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood whenever she was about to deliver bad news. "Sarah?" Well, Sarah was seeing someone else. Before the accident, a client, she called him. A very wealthy, very demanding client. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Sarah, with her innocent smile and unwavering devotion to Michael, had been living a double life. The betrayal was a bitter taste in my mouth, far more potent than the antiseptic lingering from the hospital. "Who?" I demanded, my voice sharp, cutting through the silence. "Who was he?" Aunt Carol hesitated, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. She never said his name. Just that he was powerful, dangerous even. She was trying to break it off, you see. She loved Michael, truly she did. But this man, he wouldn't let her go. He threatened her, threatened to ruin Michael, to ruin everything. A cold dread snaked its way through me. This wasn't just about a secret affair. It was about coercion, about a sinister web spun around Michael's life. A web that had ultimately ensnared him in its deadly grip. The pieces began to click into place, forming a horrifying picture. Sarah's hushed phone calls, her nervous energy, her distant demeanor. It all made a chilling kind of sense now. She hadn't been having pre-wedding jitters. She had been trapped, desperately trying to escape a dangerous situation. And Michael, my unsuspecting brother, had been caught in the crossfire. The resentment I felt towards Sarah began to morph into something else, a twisted concoction of pity and rage. She was a victim too, but her secrets had led to Michael's suffering. She was meeting him that night, wasn't she? I stated, not a question, but a grim realization. Aunt Carol nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. She was going to tell him it was over, for good. She was so scared, Cassandra. She even asked me to go with her, but I had a doctor's appointment. I told her to be careful, to meet in a public place. She said she would. The image of Sarah, terrified and alone, confronting a powerful, dangerous man, flashed through my mind. And then, the mangled car. Michael fighting for his life. The connection was undeniable. Where was she meeting him? I pressed, my voice low and urgent. This wasn't just about proving Sarah's infidelity anymore. It was about finding the monster who had done this to Michael. Aunt Carol racked her brain, her brow furrowed in concentration. She mentioned a new restaurant downtown, the one with the fancy lights. The Obsidian, I think she called it. She said he always insisted on meeting there. The name, The Obsidian, resonated with a dark, foreboding energy. It sounded like a place where secrets were forged and lives were shattered. My mind raced, connecting the dots. Sarah was trying to escape, the client wouldn't let her go, and Michael was hit by a car. It couldn't be a coincidence. This wasn't a random hit and run. This was a deliberate act, a brutal message. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted, a volcanic fury that threatened to consume me. Michael, my kind, loving brother, had been sacrificed for someone else's twisted game. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, startling Aunt Carol. "I need to go," I announced, my voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "I need to find this man. Michael deserves justice, and I'm going to get it for him." Aunt Carol grasped my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Be careful, honey. This man, he's not someone you want to cross." Her warning, however, fell on deaf ears. Fear had been replaced by a burning resolve. I was no longer just a grieving sister. I was a hunter, and my prey was in sight. The Obsidian. The name echoed in my mind, a beacon guiding me towards the precipice of a truth I knew would shatter everything. The name Obsidian was a key, unlocking a hidden chamber in my mind. It wasn't a person, I quickly realized, but a place, a club, notorious in certain circles for its exclusivity and the dark dealings that often transpired within its velvet-roped walls. My aunt's hushed warning about not crossing its owner, a shadowy figure known only as the Collector, solidified my conviction. This was where the answers lay, buried beneath layers of illicit transactions and whispered secrets. I had to go there, and I had to go alone. The night air was thick with a humid August stickiness as I stood outside the Obsidian. Neon signs from neighboring businesses cast a lurid glow on the rain-slicked street, but the Obsidian itself remained cloaked in a deliberate dimness, its entrance marked only by a bouncer whose size suggested he moonlighted as a small-town bicep model. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the thumping bass emanating from within. This wasn't a place for casual inquiries. This was a place where information had a price, and sometimes that price was more than just money. I approached the bouncer, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I'm looking for the Collector," I stated, trying to project an air of confidence I didn't feel. He merely grunted, his eyes scanning me with an unnerving intensity. "Appointment?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. I shook my head. "No, but I have information he'll want." About Michael. The name Michael hung in the air, a loaded word in this den of shadows. The bouncer's impassive face flickered, just for a second. He nodded towards a discreet side door, and I followed, my senses on high alert. The interior of the Obsidian was a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors and alcoves, the air thick with the scent of expensive cigars and desperation. I was led to a secluded booth, where a man sat silhouetted against a single strategically placed lamp. He was older, his face etched with lines that spoke of countless sleepless nights and morally ambiguous decisions. His eyes, however, were sharp, missing nothing. This had to be the Collector. "You mentioned Michael," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, yet with an underlying steel that sent a shiver down my spine. "What about him?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Michael was involved in an accident, a hit and run. I believe it wasn't an accident. And I believe you know why." His gaze didn't waver. He simply leaned back, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. "And what makes you think I would know anything about your brother, Michael?" "Sarah," I blurted out, the name a desperate gamble. "Michael's fiancée. She was involved with someone who might have wanted Michael out of the picture, and I heard she was seen here, at the Obsidian just days before the accident. With someone who fits your description." The smile vanished. His eyes narrowed, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I'd pushed too far. But then a slow, deliberate nod. "You're a clever girl, Cassandra, and remarkably brave. Or foolish." He took a long drag from his cigar, the tip glowing like a malevolent eye in the darkness. "Sarah had a problem, a gambling problem. A very serious one. She owed a significant sum to certain associates of mine. My blood ran cold. This was far worse than I had imagined. And Michael, he found out, didn't he?" I whispered, the pieces of the puzzle starting to slot into place with horrifying precision. The collector exhaled a plume of smoke. Michael was a good man, too good for some. He was going to expose her. And her debts. Which would have been problematic for everyone involved. He paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. Sarah was desperate. She made a deal, a very bad deal, to make her problems disappear, including Michael. My stomach churned. The betrayal was a physical blow, a sharp, sickening twist in my gut. Sarah, the woman Michael loved, the woman he was going to marry, had orchestrated his demise. Who? I demanded, my voice raw with a grief that was rapidly morphing into incandescent rage. Who did it? Who actually drove the car? The collector regarded me with an almost clinical detachment. That, my dear, is where things get truly complicated. Sarah didn't want blood on her own hands. She outsourced the problem to someone who specializes in making things look like accidents. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. A man named Silas. And he has a very particular way of doing business. He ensures there are no loose ends. Ever. Silas. Another name, another piece of the dark mosaic. The thought of confronting Sarah, of tearing into her for what she had done to Michael, was a burning inferno within me. But Silas, the collector's words implied, was a different kind of monster. A professional, a ghost. My resolve hardened. I had come for answers and I had found them. Now I needed to find justice for Michael, and I knew, with chilling certainty, that it would be a justice forged in fire. The air in the abandoned warehouse hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp concrete and metallic decay. Dust motes danced in the sparse shafts of moonlight, filtering through grimy windows, illuminating the figure tied to a rickety chair in the center of the room. Silas. His eyes, once so sharp and calculating, now held a glint of fear, a primal instinct that even his hardened exterior couldn't completely mask. I stood before him, the cold steel of a wrench heavy in my hand, its weight a comforting counterpoint to the tempest raging inside me. This wasn't the justice the police could offer, the sterile, impersonal kind. This was mine. My voice, when it finally came, was a low growl, barely recognizable as my own. You thought you were untouchable, didn't you? A ghost, a professional. You thought you could tear Michael's life apart and just disappear. Silas flinched, a subtle tremor running through his frame. He tried to speak, his lips parting, but no sound emerged. A gag, fashioned from a strip of old cloth, silenced him effectively. Good. I wasn't interested in his excuses, his justifications. I was interested in the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth that had been denied to Michael and our family for so long. Sarah, I began, watching his eyes for a reaction. A flicker, a widening of the pupils confirmed my suspicions. She paid you, didn't she, to make Michael's accident look like just that, an accident? To ensure he couldn't testify, couldn't reveal her little secret. I paused, letting the accusation hang in the air, a venomous cloud. The image of Michael, lying broken and unconscious, flashed before my eyes, fueling the fire that burned in my chest. He had trusted her, loved her, and she had repaid that with betrayal of the most heinous kind. Silas thrashed, the chair scraping against the concrete floor, a desperate, futile attempt to break free. I stepped closer, the wrench glinting ominously in the dim light. Don't bother, I said, my voice dangerously calm. This isn't about escape. This is about answers. And you, Silas, are going to provide them. I knelt, bringing my face close to his, my gaze unwavering. Tell me everything, every detail of her plan, every dirty secret she whispered into your ear. He stared back, defiance warring with terror. I knew this type. They broke eventually. It was only a matter of applying the right pressure. My hand moved, not to strike, but to remove the gag. The stench of his fear was palpable now. Speak, I commanded, or this conversation will become far less pleasant for you. Silas coughed, his throat raw. She She just wanted him out of the way, he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. He found out about her and the money, the embezzlement. He was going to expose her. My blood ran cold. Embezzlement. It was far worse than I had imagined. Michael, always so honest, so principled, would never have tolerated such deceit. His integrity had been his downfall. And you, I pressed, you were her solution, her cleanup crew. He nodded, a single jerky movement. She promised me a fortune. Enough to disappear, to start over. His eyes pleaded, a desperate plea for understanding, for mercy. But mercy was a luxury Michael hadn't been afforded. She thought she could buy her freedom with Michael's life, I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. She thought she could erase her crimes by erasing him. The wrench felt heavier now, its coldness seeping into my palm. The rage was still there, a simmering inferno, but beneath it, a chilling clarity began to emerge. This wasn't just about Michael anymore. It was about exposing the rot, the corruption that had festered beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives. Where are her records? The proof of her embezzlement? I demanded, my voice sharp, cutting through his fear. Where did she hide the evidence? Silas hesitated, his eyes darting around the warehouse, searching for an escape that wasn't there. He knew his life depended on this confession, on his cooperation. He finally revealed a hidden compartment in her home office, a secret safe behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The details were precise, exact. I memorized every word, every instruction, a new purpose solidifying within me. The rage had not diminished, but it had refined itself, sharpening into a weapon of precision. I left Silas there, bound and gagged, a chilling promise of what awaited him once the authorities arrived. The dawn was breaking as I drove away, the first rays of sunlight painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The sterile scent of the hospital, the constant reminder of Michael's suffering, had been replaced by the metallic tang of resolution. I had the truth, and soon I would have justice, not just for Michael, but for every penny she had stolen, every lie she had spun. Sarah's carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down, and I would be there to witness every shattering piece. The fire of my revenge was no longer just a burning inferno. It was a controlled blaze, meticulously aimed, and ready to consume everything in its path. Michael would have his peace, and Sarah, she would finally pay. The silence in the room was deafening, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Aunt Carol's confession hung heavy in the air, each word a fresh wound. My mother, my own mother, had orchestrated the entire deception, the years of neglect, the whispered rumors, the subtle manipulations that had painted me as the black sheep. It wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about tearing down my spirit, erasing my place in the family. The betrayal was a physical ache, a cold, sharp knife twisting in my gut. My hands clenched into fists, knuckles white, as I fought to control the tremor in my voice. So, all those years, I began. My voice barely a whisper, every slight, every exclusion, every time I felt like an outsider. That was her doing? Aunt Carol nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and regret. She was jealous, Michael, always, of your father's affection, of your easy charm, of the way people gravitated to you. When your father died, she saw her chance to finally win. The word win echoed in my mind, a grotesque trophy for a lifetime of calculated cruelty. It wasn't just my mother I saw now, but a monster disguised in a familiar face. The resentment I'd carried for so long, a dull ache, suddenly sharpened into an agonizing fire. It burned through my veins, demanding an outlet. This wasn't just about money, it was about vindication, about reclaiming my narrative from the lies that had defined me. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the polished floor, a sound that seemed to shatter the fragile peace. "Thank you, Aunt Carol," I said, my voice now firm, though laced with a bitterness I couldn't hide. "You've given me everything I needed." Leaving her house, I felt a strange sense of clarity, a morbid liberation. The obsession that had simmered beneath the surface for months now boiled over. I wouldn't just expose my mother. I would dismantle her carefully constructed world piece by piece. The truth, I decided, would be my weapon, and the wedding, my brother's wedding, would be the perfect stage. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and deceptively cheerful. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the hushed excitement of guests. My mother, resplendent in a designer gown, greeted everyone with a practiced smile, the picture of a proud matriarch. She caught my eye, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before hardening into a challenging stare. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. During the reception, as the champagne flowed and the toasts began, I knew my moment had arrived. I waited for the lull, after my brother and his new wife had shared their heartfelt vows, before stepping forward. The microphone felt heavy in my hand, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. All eyes turned to me, a mixture of curiosity and confusion on their faces. "Before we raise our glasses again," I announced, my voice resonating through the elegant ballroom, "I have a different kind of toast to make. A toast to truth." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. My mother's face, a moment ago beaming, was now a mask of icy fury. This was it, the confrontation I'd been building towards. I looked directly at her, my gaze unwavering. "For years," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I've been painted as the troublesome son, the black sheep, the one who couldn't quite measure up, and for years I believed it. I carried that burden, that shame. But tonight, I stand before you to reveal the architect of that narrative. I recounted everything Aunt Carol had told me, the carefully laid plans, the fabricated stories, the calculated cruelty. Each word was a hammer blow, chipping away at my mother's facade." Gasps erupted from the guests, their eyes darting between me and my mother, who now stood pale and trembling, her perfect smile shattered. The aftermath was a whirlwind of accusations, denials, and raw emotion. My brother, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief, confronted our mother. The scene was chaotic, painful, and utterly devastating. The family was torn apart, not by my actions, but by the rot that had festered beneath the surface for decades. In the end, there was no grand apology, no tearful reconciliation. My mother, cornered and exposed, retreated into a bitter silence. The inheritance, once the symbol of my long-sought justice, now felt hollow. The family, once a source of comfort, was now fractured beyond repair. I had achieved justice, yes, the truth was out, but the cost was immense. The silence that followed was not one of peace, but of emptiness. I had finally seen my mother for who she truly was, and in doing so, I had lost the last vestiges of the mother I thought I knew. It was a bittersweet closure, a victory that tasted of ash. The lessons learned were etched deep within me, the insidious nature of jealousy, the power of a lie, and the heartbreaking truth that sometimes the people closest to you can inflict the deepest wounds. I had walked through fire, and though scarred, I had emerged, finally, free.